And so Kamini ji, I'll take a couple of minutes just to welcome people and introduce what Alchemist Book
Yes.
Club is all about. Okay.
Yes.
So welcome to Alchemist Book Club, and today we are going to discuss about Shayari, Ghalib ki Shayari and Kabir ke Dohe. But let me take a couple of minutes in order to introduce you to what Alchemist Book Club is all about. It started very small, 3.5 years back. The group of people met and started discussing about books to discover, share, discuss, listen to ideas around the books and the authors. What started as a very small group became bigger. We opened out to many like-minded people to join the club. And then we keep discussing about books of various genres, which I will shortly show. And we meet last Saturdays of every month. And today is a milestone because from this month onwards, we are going to meet the second Saturdays also. So Alchemist Book Club is a book club where we have 2 meetings in a month, the second Saturdays and the last Saturdays between 3 to 4:30. The second Saturdays, we'll be discussing about books of poetry, history, and lighter subjects, literature, and things like that. Whereas in the fourth Saturdays, it'll be like a little bit on psychology and business, strategy, sales, and things like that. And some of the books that we have covered are here over a period of time. And many of these meetings have been recorded. We have the YouTube versions of all this. And today we are assembled over here in order to discuss about this particular subject. For the first ever time, we are discussing this genre of poetry. And I cannot help myself but to leave in the safe hands of Kamini right now in order to take us through this session of poetry. Okay, so over to you, Kamini.
Okay.
Looking forward. Let's start.
Yeah. Shall I start? Yes.
Please.
Yes. So good evening, everyone. Welcome, or more appropriately, adab, salam alaikum. Yes. So yes. So be forewarned that and be prepared for a lot of magic happening, because I can tell you that the very inception of this event was like magic. And we were all in this chat group just one day like any other day, and I can tell you that the Alchemist Book Club is like from good morning to good night. It's on fire throughout the day with people chatting on so many subjects, and there's not only on books and authors, but exchange of ideas and further development on what one has read and experienced. So it's really very good fun, and really fires your brain up with so many ideas. So yes, so it was one of those chat days, and in fact it was me only who said that I'm so tired with work. Please, can somebody suggest? I'm new to Chennai, where I can go to a cafe and just relax and be with a book. And there was so many lovely suggestions, including we get on to where we can go for excursions and things like that. And then I said, one remembers that Dil Dhoondta Hai, फिर वही फुर्सत के रात दिन, and then so it was like all barriers let loose, and there was so much of poetry, and everybody talking of Gulzar, not only Gulzar but Sahib Ludhianvi to Ghalib to Faraz to Kabir, and so much of wawa happening over the chat. And what, the eagle eye of our founder member TG caught on to this wave of enthusiasm going through the chat group, and he said, yes, we need to have an event on this, let us have an event on this. To anybody, and he just zeroed in on Kabir and Ghalib, and he knows the people who are experts on this in our chat, in the club. and in a matter of hardly a week, and this event is happening. So it was like really magic, and also the first time that two events in a month started happening for the Alchemists. So this we won, these Alchemists work magic, and today you're going to experience this magic in the very heartland of what is supposed to be the Hindi, anti-Hindi belt. Yes. In fact, I was so taken aback that day when, the chat, everybody's, it's flowing with so much of Hindi and Urdu and Awadhi and Bhojpuri poetry and all that. And I said, wow, am I, Chennai chat group? And how can this be? But yes, always, we all know that beyond these little human stereotyping and these pigeonholes of putting everything into some slots, mental slots, there is a universal thing that unifies, which is always, bringing people together. And one of that is poetry, because there is a divine thread running through it, the poetry which lives on and on through centuries, like Ghalib's and Kabir's. And we know through our First Testament, the very first sentence is, in the beginning was the word, isn't it? And yes, and even in our scriptures, it is the beginning of creation is with Kala Bindu Spand, Kala Bindu. And so the nucleus particle and the wave, and the first element which was created was sound. So that is why it overrides all these human divisions and brings people together. And today we are going to immerse ourselves into one such poetry, Shayari, and Dohas of Ghalib and Kabir. And we have Ramgopal ji, one of the founder members, who stumbled upon Ghalib as when he was barely 10 years old, he tells me, when he was in Jamshedpur, where his father was with the Tatas, and the love affair has gone on till today. And he put up on our chat group that he's right now reading Diwane Ghalib. And so be ready to be taken by him to a magical world of Ghalib's Shayari. Then we have young Maneesh joining us from Raipur. He is gone so much deep, and he is so much into poetry in all languages, and he's himself a composer, and I hope we hear some of his shayaris today. And then we have, I'm pointing out like this as if it's in not in Zoom, but one is so used to a live thing. And we have Anilji, again, who stumbled upon Kabir when he was barely 8 years old, when his father was transferred to Bokaro and Saval and places like that. And ever since, he has been, immersed in Kabir's Dohas. So we are very fortunate. And so let us all join in, and let there be as many wawas and, subhanallahs and all that. And so I open, and last half an hour will be question answers after the three speakers. And also we are hoping that people will present their own poetries or whatever they love about any composer. So please, yes, Ashokji, what am I saying? Ramgopalji, please start your son Ghalib.
Namaskar all, welcome. I'd like to start with a small history of Ghalib. Ghalib's entire life story is for another day and another session, full session, because it's so interesting. But I'd like to just present a little glimpse of what exactly he was and what is it that made him what he was, what he became, which is basically, if you take the world of Shayari, there is Ghalib and there is everybody else on the other side. So that is the level to which Ghalib is both, his poetry is both adorable as well as what they call in Urdu as wazan. The wazan of the Shayari is something extraordinary. So he was born basically in 1797 in Agra to a family of of Turkish descent, to a family who were basically warriors. They had nothing to do with poetry, nothing to do with any of what Ghalib became. They were all warriors who came and served the king, and they got uh, rewarded by the king, and they settled down in various places. And Ghalib's family settled down in Agra, and he was one of six siblings, uh, and he. As luck would have it, he had a house guest who came from Persia, who was basically a very learned man, a scholar, and he stayed with them for 2 years at when Ghalib was of the impressionable age, of that age when learning happens. So if Ghalib, just a minute, please. Ghalib, if he were to call anybody his ustad, and Ghalib has never called anybody as ustad throughout his life, but if he were to call anybody as ustad, it would be this particular person called Abu Samad, who visited Agra and stayed with Ghalib for 2 years during his childhood period. Ghalib got married into a very wealthy family in Delhi, and as was a common practice in those days, he moved in with his in-laws in Delhi, and that is why he ended up in Delhi, where the Darbar was. Uh, 7 children, none of them survived beyond infancy. So the poor man, a lot of that shows up in the dard in his poetry, of his being issueless, extremely devoted to his wife, but at the same time was in love with a courtesan girl, a Nachwali, which is, I guess, poetic license in those days, because some of his best poetry has come after she died. She was called Chaudhwin, and a lot of people think that Chaudhwin Ka Chand is actually written by Ghalib. It is not. Uh, it is written by somebody else. But Chaudhwin was the dancing girl, supposed to be one of the most beautiful girls in Delhi, and Ghalib had lost his heart to her. And he wrote some of his best poetry both during his courtship with her and after her death. And some of the best dard ka jo poetry hai, that has all been written by him during those days. Ghalib was a progressive Muslim. He's made a lot of fun of a lot of the ulema of those days, the people, the religious people, and he made such fun of them in such a nazuk manner, in such a subtle manner that even they couldn't actually understand what that he was making fun of them. But a lot of it was what you can call Ghalib's way of getting back at those people who he thought were not doing anything for Islam. They were actually furthering their own ends. So he had a very, but he was a devout Muslim, a 5-time namazi, and he had his own method of prayer and everything. But also he was also, because he had been tutored in metaphysics and things like that, astronomy. So he also had this questioning of God. So he had both. He did both together, and that is what makes him so great in terms of the philosophy of his poetry. He was also a compulsive gambler, and throughout his life he was always in debt. And once when his friend offered him money, he jocularly told him, "There are people whose job is to lend money. Why should I make them unhappy?" So that is that is his way of refusing money from a close friend, one of his best and closest friends. So this is one of his things. The other one was he was addicted to the bottle, yeah, and he had totally no qualms about being a drunk. And he also perhaps somewhere knew that both of these habits, and along with his love for this Kotewali, has brought out some of the best poetry that today we are enjoying or going to enjoy. Uh, so that without further ado, I will get into the poetry part of it. I'm taking up three specific poems of his. The first one is a very, very common one, used several times by Bollywood. And it's Dile Nadan Tujhe Hua Kya Hai, Aakhir is Dard Ki Dawa Kya Hai. Then I'll be moving on to the next one, which is Ye Na Thi Hamari Kismat Ki Visale Yaar Hota, which is again not a. I have deliberately avoided some of his more obscure ones. I mean the Kami Meri Thi, because the translations were taking quite a bit of time. And so I have taken a shortcut and chosen some of the easier ones. And the third one that I'm taking up is a slightly more difficult one, but it's a very short one. ये है आह को चाहिए एक उम्र असर होने तक. So these are the three ones that I'm going to present today. So my method of presenting will be, I will go through the entire poetry first for the people who understand the poetry, because that will be a very stopping after every couplet to give the English translation would be, for the people who actually understand, will be quite a cumbersome thing. Then I'll go back and read the couplet and then read the translation. So I'll be going through each Shayari twice. So without much ado, I will start with Dile Nadan. So Ghalib says, Dile Nadan tujhe hua kya hai? आखिर इस दर्द की दवा क्या है? हमको उनसे वफा की है उम्मीद, हमको उनसे वफा की है उम्मीद, जो नहीं जानते वफा क्या है. हम हैं मुश्ताक और वो बेजार, हम हैं मुश्ताक और वो बेजार, या इलाही ये माजरा क्या है. हम भी मुंह में जबान रखते हैं, हम भी मुंह में जबान रखते हैं, काश पूछो कोई कि मुद्दा क्या है. जबकि तुझ बिन नहीं कोई मौजूद, जबकि तुझ बिन नहीं कोई मौजूद, फिर ये हंगामा ए खुदा क्या है.
Oh, very good. Wonderful. Wow, really.
ये परी चेहरा लोग कैसे हैं, ये परी चेहरा लोग कैसे हैं, घमजो वो इश्क व अदा क्या है. शिकने जुल्फे अंबरी क्यों है, शिकने जुल्फे अंबरी क्यों है, निगाहे चश्मे सुरमा सा क्या है. सब्ज़ो गुल कहाँ से आई, सब्ज़ो गुल कहाँ से आई है, अब्र क्या चीज है, हवा क्या है. जान तुझ पे निसार करता हूं, जान तुझ पे निसार करता हूं, मैं नहीं जानता दुआ क्या है.
Oh my God. Oh, very.
हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा, हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा, और दरवेश की सजा क्या है. मैंने माना कि कुछ नहीं गालिब, मैंने माना कि कुछ नहीं गालिब, मुफ्त हाथ आए तो बुरा क्या है.
Wow,
Wow. Very nice.
wonderful.
I'll go into the transliterations now. दिले नादा तुझे हुआ क्या है, आखिर इस दर्द की दवा क्या है. Oh my innocent heart, what has happened to you? Oh my innocent heart, what has happened to you? What is the cure for this pain after all? हमको उनसे वफा की है उम्मीद, जो नहीं जानते वफा क्या है. I hope for faith from one who doesn't know what it means to be faithful. हम हैं मुश्ताक और वो बेजार, या इलाही ये माजरा क्या है. I am anxious and eager, she is cold. Oh God, what is this mystery? मैं भी मुंह में जबान रखता हूं, काश कोई पूछो कि मुद्दा क्या है. I too have a tongue in my mouth, or I too have an opinion. Somebody asked me, what is the matter or what is the intention? Because nobody has asked me. So how can I open my mouth and talk when nobody has asked me what is the intention? This is a beautiful one. This can be interpreted in two ways. जबकि तुझ बिन नहीं कोई मौजूद, फिर ये हंगामा ये खुदा क्या है? So this can be interpreted as Ghalib addressing his love, or Ghalib addressing God. He says, if there is no one in the world except you, you are the only one, then why all this ruckus in this world about God? So you can say तुझ बिन नहीं कोई मौजूद can also mean his lover. It could also mean that when you are the only one in my life, why is all this ruckus there about God? Or it could be Ghalib addressing God and saying, जबकि कुछ भी नहीं तुझ बिन नहीं मौजूद, there is nobody but God, then why is everybody making a ruckus about God?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. That's beautiful.
It's a beautiful, couplet by itself. I mean, worthy of praise. So,
Yes.
ये परी चेहरा लोग कैसे हैं? गमज़ा व इश्क व अदा क्या है? What are these beautiful angelic faced women like? Or what are these angelic women like? All their airs, what and graces, what is it about? And here he is clearly addressing, one of his muses or beloveds. शिकनी जुल्फे अंबरी क्यों है? निगाहे चश्मे सुरमा क्या है? Why do these fragrant curls exist? What is the meaning of the glance of your eyes? So he is trying to interpret basically a woman, and what is the thing? And he continues in the same thing. सब्ज़ो गुल कहाँ से आई? सब्ज़ो गुल कहाँ से आई है? अब्र क्या चीज़ है? हवा क्या है? Where has this beautiful greenery come from? Greenery and nature, that is. Where is this beautiful greenery and nature come from? What is this cloud and this wind? Here he is being abstract. He is bringing in abstractism into his poetry. Then he comes back to his beloved again, which he cannot avoid, of course. He says, जान तुम पे निज़ार करता हूँ, मैं नहीं जानता दुआ क्या है. And this is again one of his best. He says, I'm willing to sacrifice my life for you. I don't know what else is prayer.
Oh, so beautiful. Yeah, wow.
One of his most beautiful poetry. And this again could be addressed to his love or his God. So this is again Ghalib's wordplay, his beautiful wordplay at हाँ भला कर तेरा भला होगा और दरवेश की सदा क्या है. This is where he is pulling a slight leg at one of his mullah friends, where he says, do good and good will come to you. What else will a dervish say?
Yeah.
What
else can he say? There's nothing else he's going to say. So और दरवेश की सदा क्या है? This is what he's going to say. And finally, he says,
and, if you can just go back, do good and
good will come to you.
right.
भला कर तेरा भला होगा. If you do good, good will happen to you. What else will a holy man say?
Okay.
That is
his legs,
actually pulling his legs. मैंने माना कि कुछ नहीं घालिब, मुफ्त हाथ आए तो बुरा क्या है. I agree Ghalib is nothing. Here he is being self-deprecatory. He says, I agree that Ghalib is nothing. But what is the harm but if you get him for nothing?
Wow.
Wow.
Oh my.
That was Dile Nadan Tujhe. We'll move on to ये न थी हमारी किस्मत, another of his classics. So ये न थी हमारी किस्मत के विसाले यार होता, अगर और जीते रहते यही इंतजार होता। तेरे वादे पर जिए हम तो ये जान झूठ जाना, कि खुशी से मर न जाते अगर एतबार होता।
वाह।
तेरी नाजुकी से जाना कि बंदा है अहद बोदा, तेरे नाजुकी से जाना कि बंदा है अहद बोदा, कभी तू न तोड़ सकता अगर उस्तवार होता। कोई मेरे दिल से पूछे पूछे तेरे तीरे नीम कश को, ये कलिश कहां से होती जो जिगर के पार होता। ये कहां की दोस्ती है कि बने हैं दोस्त ना से, कोई चारा साज होता कोई हमगुसार होता। कहूं किससे मैं कि क्या है, शबे गम बुरी बला है, मुझे क्या बुरा था मरना अगर एक बार होता। हुए मर के हम जो रुसवा, हुए क्यों न गर के दरिया, न कभी जनाजा उठता न कभी मजार होता।
वाह वाह
वाह।
वाह, really.
उसे कौन देख सकता कि वो यकान है कि यकता, कि दुई की बू भी होती तो कहीं दो चार होता। ये मसाइल तसव्वुफ ये तेरा बयां गालिब, तुझे हम वली समझते जो न बाद अखबार होता। ये न थी हमारी किस्मत के विसाले यार होता, अगर और जीते रहते यही इंतजार होता। So the meaning of this is fairly straightforward. It's not very complicated. Again, addressing his lover, moving on to God, coming back to one about Ghalib, about himself. Most of his own are usually this. The last one, the Matta as it's called, is usually self-deprecatory. Not that he had a poor opinion of himself, but he had a great sense of balance. You know, whatever he would do, it would be with a great sense of balance. So, going into the meanings, ये न थी हमारी किस्मत के विसाले यार होता, अगर और जीते रहते यही इंतजार होता। It is not my fate to meet my lover. Had I lived longer, this would have been my only desire. तेरे वादे पर जिए हम तो ये जान झूठ जाना, कि खुशी से मर न जाते अगर एतबार होता। To live on your promise is to make my life a lie. To live on your promise is to make my whole life a lie. Would I not have died of happiness if I could have trusted your promise? Would I not have died of happiness if I could have trusted your promise? तेरे नाजुकी से जाना कि बंदा है अहद बोदा, कभी तू न तोड़ सकता अगर उस्तवार होता। Here he is criticizing her for being fickle. He says, from your frailty or from your the way the nasuk, yeah, you know, the nasuki is basically frailty. So from your frailty, I learned that your promise was delicate. It was not a hard and fast promise, it was a delicate promise. It would not have been broken if it had been determined. So he's blaming her for breaking her promise and not being determined about it. कभी तू न तोड़ सकता अगर उस्तवार होता. You would not have broken it if you had been determined. कोई मेरे दिल से पूछे तेरे तीरे नीम कश को. Someone asked me about your half-drawn arrow. Tire neem kash. It's half-drawn.
Oh, okay.
If it had been fully drawn, it would have killed me. It would have killed me.
Yeah.
It's half-drawn. ये कलिश कहां से होती जो जिगर के पार होता. Would I have felt this pain if it had pierced me?
Yes, the heart.
No, heart, yeah, jigger. Jigger is liver actually. Literal translation is liver, but pierced the heart. You can say in a way it has pierced the heart. So he is again telling her that she is fickle. Even the arrow that she shot at me could not have been fully drawn. It is just half drawn and more to hurt me than to kill me.
Yeah. Hurt.
Beautiful.
Uh,
Beautiful.
Too good.
This is another beautiful one. This is something which Ghalib comes up with and can be used anywhere, anytime because it's very relevant. ये कहाँ की दोस्ती है कि बने हैं दोस्त ना से. He says, what kind of friendship is this where friends are advisors?
Ah.
ये कहाँ की दोस्ती है कि बने हैं दोस्त ना से, कोई चारा साज होता, कोई हमगुसार होता. Someone to ease my pain, someone to sympathize with me. When I go to my friend for with my pain, he becomes my advisor. What I require is someone to ease my pain, someone to sympathize with me. I do not require an advisor.
So beautiful.
Correct. Yeah, like you said, you can use it anywhere. Yeah.
Anywhere. कहूं किससे मैं कि क्या है, शबे गम बुरी बला है. To whom should I narrate the pangs of the evenings of sorrow? मुझे क्या बुरा था मरना अगर एक बार होता. I would not have resented death if it had come only once.
Beautiful.
Now I'm dying every day because every evening is sorrow. I'm literally dying die a death every day. मर के हम जो रुसवा क्यों हुए क्यों ना दर के दरिया. If I had died, that I died and was disgraced, why did I just not drown? There would have been no funeral, ना कभी जनाजा उठता, ना कहीं मजार होता. There would have been no funeral, there would have been no tomb erected. So this is Ghalib's way of saying, rather than die disgraced and have a disgraced exit, you die, you drown, and your body is not found. You're gone.
Okay.
I would prefer that death to a disgraced death.
Yeah.
And as irony would have it, he's one of the most celebrated shayars in the world today.
Yes.
Yet this is what he writes. This is another one where he talks about God. He says,
Excuse me, can
Yeah.
I just intervene that can we have the next speaker, and then we come back to the third, because it will not give enough time to the next two speakers.
okay,
Can we do
Yeah.
that? Because as I said, it's 20 minutes. So, okay.
Yeah.
Then we
Yeah.
come back to them. Okay. So, Maneesh, are you there? Hello?
Manish, you are on mute. Maybe you need to unmute and then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Yes.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So I will just, get through the basics of Urdu poetry first. Basically, Urdu poetry is having different forms of poetry. The most, the most usual form what we come across is ghazals. Okay? So, and these poetries differ from each other in the forms and the context they are, put through. Another form is the nazm, which is the literal meaning of poem. Poem is something like where is a coherent thought, and all the couplets of the poem is poems are interconnected, and you have to interpret in it the couplets of a poem in that context. Another one is a marsiya. Marsiya is more like an obituary when somebody some great person dies, or when and a character description is done of him. Okay. Masnavi is something again a descriptive poetry which is could be which could be of an alive person or could be of an event also. Okay, so this is one. Then another one is called hamd. Hamd is the praise of God. Hamd and naat, they are two forms of poetry, which is a directly adopted from the Arabic poetries. So hamd is basically the praise of God, and naat is there's another form of poetry called naat. Naat is basically the poetry which is said in praise of Prophet Muhammad. So that is these are the different types of it. Now, how the ghazal distinguishes itself from the other forms of poetry. So basically, what the ghazal is having is you have a particular rhyme of scheme in the ghazal, and then you also have a particular meter which needs to be followed throughout the whole piece. And and there is another feature, but that has been quite lost right now. Earlier, it used to be considered unless a particular piece of poetry is not having 5 couplets, it wasn't used to be considered as a ghazal. Okay, so that was a basic character key. It used to have at least 5 couplets. Now the ghazal, especially now the ghazal, in the meters we have in ghazal are around 18 meters, but mostly used are around 12 meters. Okay, and they are actually just an meters is just an arrangement of long and short syllables. Okay, like, and the smallest unit which is repetitive, that is called rukn. Okay, and what Ramgopal ji was telling about, another one in Urdu poetry is about the weight of a particular sound, that whether it is a short syllable or whether it is the long syllable. And when we write, when we check out the meter of a poetry, well, we call it vazn karna. So that is how and that is what brings the rhythm and the music to the whole poetry of ghazal. Okay, ghazal can be in the couplet of ghazal, they are they don't need not to be coherent with each other, they need not to be connected with each other They could be on different subjects. It's just like it's something like a pack of assorted biscuits, where you can have some biscuits, some salty biscuits, some sweet biscuits, and some tangy and something like that. But the thing is that it needs to have the same rhyme, it needs to have the same radif, and it needs to be in the same meter. So that is how we distinguish the poetry. Especially when we talk of Ghalib's poetry, Ghalib had written around something more than 14 to 18,000 couplets, but he himself discarded major part of his poetry, and he never let it go into the public domain. And he literally kind of destroyed those poetry, because he found that these is something we kind of inferior, and what which need not to be get into that. So this was the kind of you may call the obsession of to the extent he was self-critical about his poetry, and this reflects because there you won't find any other poet except Mir Taqi that Ghalib has ever praised. He used to treat everybody as very inferior, and this is very kind of famous thing that he has a kind of rivalry with the other poets during that time in the Mughal court, with the Sheikh Ibrahim Zauq, who was the master of Bahadur Shah Zafar. He used to teach him. He was the ustad of Bahadur Shah Zafar that time. And another famous poet was Momin Khan Momin. And a lot of contemporary poets were there. So he used to be, really at the loggerheads with them always. So yeah, that was the poetry. That was about that poetry. And another Ramgopal ji was, reciting up ये थी हमारी किस्मत कि विसाले यार होता, अगर और जीते रहते यही इंतजार होता. I will just start from where he has left. उसे कौन देख सकता, उसे कौन देख सकता कि यगाना है वो यकता, जो दुई की भू भी होती तो कहीं दो चार होता. Now this is a particular couplet which deals with the oneness of God. Now that was all the Abrahamic religions all about. उसे कौन देख सकता, that means he's not visible, nobody can see him. वो यकता है, वो कि यगाना है वो यकता, he is alone and he is unique. जो दुई की बू भी होती कहीं दो चार होता. If there would have been any contribution of anybody else in the creation of this whole universe, he would have, just came down and moved around saying, oh, I had contributed into this creation of the universe, but nobody has done it like that to us. So it's obvious that he's single, and that's what the whole concept of Tawheed or the oneness of God is about. So this is how he describes it. ये मसाइल तसव्वुफ, ये तेरा बयान गालिब, तुझे हम वली समझते जो न बादा ख्वार होता. So tasawwuf is called, tasawwuf is the word for Sufism. Okay, ये मसाइल मतलब the issues relating to the Sufism. So Ghalib in his own self-praise, because either he will, if you see the Ghalib's poetry, either he will, self-depreciating himself, or he will be just going extravagant about himself. Oh, I'm the greatest. So that is what Ghalib is all about. Masail tasawwuf, ye tera bayan Ghalib, hum tujhe wali samajhte jo na bada khwar hota. So here he's saying that you are so philosophical, you are so in depth, and you have such a perspective of looking, a spiritual perspective of looking at the things. So if you won't have been, so fond of wines, and you won't have been drinking, because that is something which is prohibited in Islam, you can't drink wine. So if you won't have been, such a drunkard, we would have considered you to be of some, some saint or something. We would have bought you awards for that. Yeah.
Oh God, okay.
So that is, now there was one couplet I think Ramgopal ji had recited it, but he couldn't explain it. कहूँ किससे मैं कि क्या है, कहूँ किससे मैं कि क्या है, शबे गम बुरी बला है, मुझे क्या बुरा था मरना अगर एक बार होता. कहूँ किससे मैं कि क्या है, शबे गम बुरी बला है, मुझे क्या बुरा था मरना अगर एक बार होता. Now what he's saying is that now to whom I'm going to go and tell, and how I'm going to tell to the world and the people that how miserable is this night, pain of night, and how it is really tormenting. If it was to just die once, I would have happily died. But to live up a life is like dying every day and dying every minute and going through the pains and all the agonies in life and ups and lows, highs and life. So it's like going to the tormentation. I have to die every day. So it's better, if it would have been, to die, just die once, I would have died up. And it would have been really, I would have just, escaped this prison of life. There is another couplet of him which I'm really fond of, and it's such a deep philosophical couplet. कैदे हयात और बंदाए गम असल में दोनों एक हैं, कैदे हयात और बंदाए गम असल में दोनों एक हैं, मौत से पहले इंसान इनसे निजात पाए क्यों. So what he wants to say, the prison of life and the sorrows of men, they are both the same. So why one should be expecting to be from the free from the pain and the grief and the sorrows before he dies, because that's what the whole life is all about. You have to, and I don't really exactly remember who said this, but to endure life, you have to get used to two things: injustices of men and damages of time. So those are the two things one have to get used to endure life. So yeah, so yes, that is how it, and that I think so. Yeah, and there was this couplet Tere Vaade Par Jiyam that I guess Ramgopal ji had already explained. Now I will just give you an example how different poets in Urdu had used the same expression, including Ghalib. Okay, there is a couplet of Ghalib. ताअत में ता रहे न मयो अंग भी की लाग, ताअत में ता रहे न मयो अंग भी की लाग, तोज़क में डाल दे उठाकर कोई बहिश्त को. So here is a expression which is used that one should throw the hell into heaven. Heaven into hell. That the heaven should go into hell. Okay. The same expression was earlier used by Mir. Mir Taqi was a predecessor of Mirza Ghalib. He used as जाए है जी निजात के गम में, ऐसी जन्नत गई जहन्नम में. So that is the same expression. Then another poet that is who was a contemporary of Mirza Ghalib, so he used it. मोमिन खुदा के वास्ते ऐसा मकान न छोड़, मोमिन खुदा के वास्ते ऐसा मकान न छोड़, दोजक में डाल खुल्द को, दोजक में डाल खुल्द को, कुएं बता न छोड़. But now these are three couplets using the same expression, okay, that throwing of heaven into hell. But there is an interesting that all three are dealing with different philosophies, okay. Like when we talk of me, जाए है जी नजात के गम में, ऐसी जन्नत गई जहन्नम में. So that deals with the whole concept of the whole concept of Hindu philosophy of nirvana and taking yourself beyond the cycle of life and death. जाए है जी नजात के गम में. Now whole my life is just getting destroyed in that how I'm going to get elevated from this cycle of life and death. And if this is how the things, and if this is how I'm going to reach up to the heaven, and my whole life is getting spoiled in just the worries that whether I will be getting the nirvana on, and that such a hell, such a heaven should go into hell. I don't want to get that is the extent destroying my presence. So that is how me reduce. Now coming to Ghalib. ताअत में तार है न मयोंग भी की लाग, ताअत में तार है न मयोंग भी की लाग, दोजक में डाल दे उठाकर को ही बहिश्त को. Tat means devotion, ta means since, mayo ang means may means the wine, angbi means honey. Okay, so if somebody is praying just for the sake of whatever the pleasantries he is going to get into the heaven after the death, or because of his all the good deeds and all that, so if that is and he's not really connecting to Almighty, and he's not totally dedicating him to Almighty, he's not trying to understand the importance of connecting to the, and not really understand, he's being more ritualistic and traditionalist in the approach of his devotion, then such hell should be thrown into the fire of hell. It doesn't really deserve. So that is how
Okay.
he is. Yeah. So the मोमिन, and now comes about मोमिन खुदा के वास्ते ऐसा मकान न छोड़, दोजक में डाल खुद को कुएं बता न छोड़. Here again मोमिन is saying कि don't leave the place where you are really finding the connect. Okay, if even it is somewhere, if even it is ideal worship and you're finding that connect, you are able to establish about that connect with the Almighty, then you should not be leaving it. You can continue to even go for the idol worship, but till the time you are finding a great connect with the and you're finding a meaningful devotion into it. So this is how the same expression has been used by three different poets in totally different meanings. So this has been one of the very, and you will find if you go into lot into the old poetry, you will find somebody some poets pulling up leg of their predecessor, that somebody had said something, then they will be writing a reply to it and just pulling up their leg. So this is quite which goes on in other poetry, but not too often. Yeah. I will. This is a very famous ghazal of Mirza Ghalib. I will just recite a couple of couplets. Then I will. I think so. Anilji will be speaking then. And this is said to be something he created extempore in the court of Mughal Darbar when he was pulled out. Because earlier what happened, he made a certain remark against Ibrahim Zauq, Sheikh Ibrahim Zauq, who was the master of Bahadur Shah Zafar. And then to justify that, he said, no, I was just, actually he was making fun of him while he was sitting with his friends. But to justify that he said a whole ghazal in extempore ghazal in before the Bahadur Shah Zafar in a mushaira which was going in the Mughal courts. हर एक बात पे कहते हैं कि तू क्या है, हर एक बात पे कहते हैं कि तू क्या है, तुम्ही कहो ये अंदाज गुफ्तगू क्या है. न शोले में ये करिश्मा न बर्क में ये अदा, कोई बताए वो शोके तुंदुखू क्या है. चिपक रहा है बदन पर लहू से पैराहन, चिपक रहा है बदन पर लहू से पैराहन, हमारे जेब को अब हाजते रफू क्या है. जला है जिस्म जहां दिल भी जल गया होगा, जला है जिस्म जहां दिल भी जल गया होगा, कुरेदते हो जो जब राख, कुरेदते हो जो अब राख, जुस्तजू क्या है रगों में दौड़ते. This is one of the most beautiful couplet of this. रगों में दौड़ते फिरने के हम नहीं कायल, रगों में दौड़ते फिरने के हम नहीं कायल, जब आंख ही से न टपका तो फिर लहू क्या है. That means we are just not, fond of living like, passing on the time on earth. It's not something, because flow of blood is something very natural and, it happens with everybody. But to really live up the life is to, get to your extremes, either to even if it is the painful side of life. So if Khoon ke aansu run, that literally what we proverb we use, so that is how he used it. जब आँख ही से न टपका तो फिर वो लहू क्या. If you haven't made the most of it to your life, then what you had actually did with life. So that is how he goes. And then this is one of the I think so. Anil ji would like to speak, or I should say something.
Yeah, I think then we'll come back to you, because it's
okay. And another, I would just wrap
sure,
it as a saying, what is why this is unique combination of couplets and dohas. So the thing is that both the forms of poetry, whether it is a doha or it is a couplet or the shair, okay, they are complete poems in themselves. They don't need anything else to give up them a meaning. So true. Has how I don't know whether you realize this. So this is two forms of poetry where you encapsulate the whole wisdom in 2 lines. Okay, and the word shair actually comes from the same origin, from where the word shaur comes. Shaur means wisdom. So this is something where you encapsulate the wisdom in just 2 lines. So that is called shair. That is that is the same thing with doha, and that is the same thing with shair, that you have to be crisp and bring out the whole sense and the whole poetry and the whole wisdom into 2 lines. Okay. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Beautiful,
so
beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yes, Anil ji, we are all waiting for Kabir's dohas.
It's very difficult to come back from what Ramgopal ji was just taking us through, from Ghalib again to Kabir. It's a big transition. But then, as we know that Ghalib was in the 18th century, and of course Kabir was in the 15th century. And one particular aspect of Kabir, if you see, is that he was a very ordinary man. He was a weaver by profession. But the thing is that he started looking at the common things and bringing out a lot of insights from there. Let me just bring some of the recent usage of Kabir in many of the films, as well as many of the renderings you would have seen. Like, say, for example, the famous Indian Ocean album, Genie, is a perfect example of how the rendering of Kabir was used, like the intricately woven blanket. Whatever he was doing, he was trying to bring it in the poems itself. He lived that life. It is not, and you would be surprised to see that Kabir was an uneducated, illiterate person. So most of his was his verbal renderings. It was not written at all. Another very important recent thing, if you would look at, is Neeraj Arya's Kabir Cafe. You would see that there are a lot Halke Gadi, Hanko, Chandriya Genie, that intricately woven blanket has been so much favorite among these filmmakers, many of them. And then the classical singer Kumar Gandharva also used Kabir's renderings in his poetry. In Kabir's poetry, he was being used. And then Anand Gandhi's film, that is the short film that he had, Right Here, Right Now, as well as Continuum. In fact, he used many of the Kabir's poems. And it's very nice to see, if you see those short movies, you will see that, he's trying to say that how one good event can bring in a chain of good events, in the sense that, how a good experience, if you have a very good experience in the morning, it can bring a chain of good experiences throughout the day. And similar like that, how a bad experience can bring a chain of bad, a chain of events. So it is all dependent on that one experience. So those kind of inspirations many of these people have got from Kabir. And of course, Kabir was a Sufi saint. He was coming from that Bhakti movement. He was at Varanasi. But it is very surprising to see that he wanted to leave Varanasi and go to a place near Lucknow, where it is to die. In the moment of death, he did not want to die at Varanasi. He wanted to go and die in a place about 240 kilometers from Lucknow, where people normally say that if you die, you become a donkey or something like that. So he wanted to break that myth. Actually, that was a superstition. So what Kabir had in his mind is that, he always had this challenge of breaking the superstition. And he did not, although, it is said that he was brought up by a Muslim couple, he was born to a Hindu family. So he did not belong to a religion at all. Both Allah as well as Ram was the same for him. So that's what his teachings was also. God is one. Those kind of bhakti movements, Sufi, this thing, that's what he was having in his mind. And that's what his 15th century verbal was converted to writings in the 17th century. So you can just see the generations have traveled before it became this thing of that, the written form. So that is the beauty of that. So he lived his life. So let me just take some of the Kabir's dohas. If TG can just, I would just take a few dohas. Maybe you would be able to appreciate that. So, it would be very interesting to translate them and then see the depths of it. Yes, we can start, TG, if we can.
Sure. Is it audible?
You can just pause. What he's saying is that Guru Govind Dou Khade. Guru Govind. Guru is the master. Govind is the God. So just imagine a situation where both Guru as well as Govind both are standing in front of you. आप किसका चरण स्पर्श करेंगे? मतलब whose feet will you touch first? That was the dilemma. So he says that Guru, you should touch the feet of Guru, because Guru is the person who has showed you the path to God. So this is a very interesting dilemma where you see both Guru as well as Bhagwan is coming, and he is trying to equate with that and to see who is bigger. And the gist of this thing is that Guru is always bigger because Guru shows the way. Because until unless there is no knowledge, ज्ञान नहीं मिलेगा, तो कैसे भगवान तक पहुंचेगा? That is what he is saying. Until unless you don't get that ज्ञान, that knowledge, how do you reach God? So he's trying to, explain that, and a very, very wonderful way of explaining that. Yeah, Guru as well as God both are there. Yeah, we can go further to the next Doha.
बड़ा हुआ तो क्या हुआ, जैसे पेड़ खजूर। बड़ा हुआ तो क्या हुआ, जैसे पेड़ खजूर। पंथी को छाया नहीं, फल लागे अति दूर। कबीरा फल लागे अति दूर।
Let's look at the meaning of this. Bada hua to kya hua? What is the use of becoming a big man, a great person? Jaise ped khajur, he is trying to compare the greatness of a man to a palm tree. It's tall palm tree. Panthi ko chaya nahi. Panthi means bird, and you are not able to give shade to a bird. Panthi ko chaya nahi. Fal lage ati dur. That means the fruit are very hard to reach. It is such a great height. So what he is trying to say is that of what use is greatness if it is not of use to others? So what Kabirji is trying to say is that if a person is great in terms of any of those qualities, He has to be useful to the community, the society as a whole, because otherwise it will be like that palm tree where it is difficult to get that fruit, and at the same time it doesn't give shade to many. So see the comparison, how he has compared the greatness of a person to the tallness of a palm tree. So we can go to the next Doha.
ऐसी बानी बोलिए मन का पाखो, ऐसी बानी बोलिए मन का पाखो, और उनको शीतल करे आप हूँ शीतल हो कबीरा, आप हूँ शीतल हो।
ऐसी बाणी बोलिए, that means we have to utter such words. Man ka apa khoi. Here apa, he is talking about ahankar. Apa means man mein ahankar ke bina. In Doha what happens is that aisi bani boliye man ka apa khoi. That means by removing the ahankar, the pride of the mind, let us utter those words. Apna tan sital karai, auron ko bhi sital hui. That means it will give peace to yourself. It will give comfort to your body as well as your mind, as well as give those coolness to others. So why not utter those words which gives a lot of comfort to others rather than uttering others? So he's trying to emphasize the importance of what we utter without any kind of pride. That is the kind of this thing that he has been able to bring out. So we'll go on to the next one.
बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, बुरा ना मिले या कोई, बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, बुरा ना मिले या कोई, जो मन खोजा अपना मुझसे बुरा ना कोई कबीरा, मुझसे बुरा ना कोई।
बुरा जो देखन मैं चला. That means I wanted to see where the evil thing is there, where the impurities are there. बुरा जो देखन मैं चला, बुरा ना मिलिया कोई. I could not find any impurities anywhere, no evil-mindedness anywhere. जो दिल खोजा आपनो, मुझसा बुरा ना कोई. When I evaluated my own mind, when I saw within myself, I saw that through my mind, whatever I see, that perception, that lens is what is all about. So all those evil things are there in which we look at it, the way in which we look at it. Sometimes what happens is that we are very quick in judging others without realizing in what situation they are. So those kind of things. So if we are also placed in a similar situation like this, I'm sure that we would also behave in a similar way. So that's what Kabirji is trying to say, that it is the lens through which we look at others. So it is not that evil is there outside. We always try to complain about things which are there outside our this thing, but we never look at within ourselves. So Kabirji is asking us to go within ourselves, contemplate, seek the truth, see within yourself. Everything is within yourself. The God is within yourself. That is what Kabirji is trying to tell us through his words. Next one, the law.
माटी कहे कुम्हार से तू क्या रौंदे मोए, माटी कहे कुम्हार से तू क्या रौंदे मोए, एक दिन ऐसा आएगा मैं रौंदूंगी रौंदूंगी तो
Now here you can see Kabir himself is
Beautiful.
a weaver.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, and at the same time he's trying to compare it to what a potter does, you know. So he's trying to compare it with various occupations. So you could see how Kabir is very observant of the other occupations and trying to read life through that. So here in this case, what he tries to say is just Mati kahe kumar ko. That means when he is trying to knead that mud, you know, for making that pottery. Tu kya ronde mohe? You know, what is it that you are trying to mold me? एक दिन ऐसा आवेगा मैं रोंदूंगी तोहे. That means he's trying to, you know, saying that a day will come when I will be beneath you, when I will be needing you. So see the kind of this thing that he's trying to look at it. He says that the potter's occupation, the potter kneading the mud, making the shape is one kind of situation, but a day will come when, you know, I will do that. So the situation is changing. So you can see how Kabirji is trying to and here one interesting word is that ronna, you know, that molding. So that is what you know, the key word here it is all about. So the situation keeps on changing. So again Kabirji goes and talks about various dohes, like, you know, like he says dukh mein sumarin sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi, jo sukh mein sumarin kare, dukh kahe ko hui. You know, the kind of see what he says is that dukh mein sumarin sab kare. All of us remember God in times of distress, in times of sadness. Sukh mein kare na koi, but in times of happiness we do not remember him. But even if we remember God in times of happiness, then why should sorrow come to us? So that is what Kabirji is trying to bring various facets of life, various situations, and you will see that he is trying to teach us the deep insights. And he had that great courage to bring out you know, some of these myths and all that from various religions, not only Hinduism, Islam, everywhere he is trying to bring it out and trying to show to the world how you need to look at it very clearly. And even many of the verses of Kabirji you can find in Guru Granth Sahib. You know, the one of the largest collection of Kabirji's couplets are found in the, that is outside the Sikh community, is found in the Guru Granth Sahib. So you can find that how deeply he has affected, and he's keeping on you know, having an influence on many generations to come. And although he is an illiterate, you will find that his dohas, his couplets are seeing and there is a lot of place in the academic literature even today as well. So that is the greatness of Kabirji. And if you look at the meaning of Kabirji means famous, a famous poet, you know. So that is the effect that Kabirji had on generations to come. And I am sure that in the generations to come also, if we lead life as per Kabirji's way of you know, looking at life, I am sure that many of the problems can be solved, because he tried to
So
bring
true.
both of them in a doha, in a two sentence. He did not prolong it. You know, within that two stanzas itself, he is trying to redress many of the problems. And I am sure that Kabirji would have you know, foreseen the kind of impatience we would be having in the generations to come. So he tried to bring in the entire meaning in those two stanzas so that we need not listen
Yes.
for a longer time, I believe.
Amazing. Yes.
Really, thank you so much. Yeah, so,
Thanks a lot, Anil.
Thank you.
So much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, is Kamini
Yes,
there?
yes, very much there, enjoying the whole show. Yeah, and so now we can open it to the house, or if there are no questions or anybody wants to recite, otherwise Ramji, Ramgopalji can complete, you know, the portion that was left out. But if there are any questions, we can take that also to any of the speakers.
No, I would like to thank Maneesh for completing the last two couplets of that particular. It was beautifully enunciated by him. Thank you, Maneesh, for that. I just want to elaborate on what Maneesh ji said about you know, the हर एक बात पे कहते हो कि तू क्या है. So it's a very it's one of the, you know, most famous episodes of Ghalib's life. So Ghalib had a lot of this, he was never, he had the cream of Delhi clamoring after him for his poetry. At the same time, he also had Pakka Tapori friends. He had all kinds of friends. So he would was hanging around in the street one day with a group of his friends when Zoc went by in his palanquin. Ustad Zoc. So Ustad Zoc's palanquin consisted of 4 lifters, which means in those days the number of lifters shows your status in society. So there were 4 people lifting his thing, and he was the emperor's Ustad and all that. So Ghalib made a passing comment. What he said was, "हुआ है शेख का मुनाजिब, हुआ है शेख का मुसाहिब, फिरते हैं इतराता," which translates into having become the king's companion, he shows off arrogantly. Zoc heard him. Zoc heard him, and he went and complained bitterly to the king. And he said to the emperor, and he told him, "Ghalib made fun of me on this thing." So the king in the next Mushaira took it up very seriously with Ghalib, and he told him, "What is this? I mean, you're making fun of my Ustad. How is it that too on the road? How is it?" So Ghalib's quick thinking and his wit, he said, Ustad ji didn't listen to the whole ghazal. He only listened to one part of the couplet. So they said, "Okay, complete it."
Very clever.
Very clever. So they said, "Complete it." He said, "हुआ है शेख का मुसाहिब, फिरते हैं इतराता, मगर ना शेर में आप गालिब की आबरू क्या है." He made it on himself. What he says is, having become the king's companion, he shows off arrogantly. Otherwise, what other claim to respect does Ghalib have? So he made it effectively on himself. So the entire Mushara was, the complete Mehfil, they appreciated it, and they said, if the last couplets could be so good, recite the entire poet. So now Ghalib was caught because there is no full thing. There is only the last one, and that is when Extempore on the spot he comes up with.
Oh, okay.
हर एक बात में कहते हो कि तू क्या है.
Oh, okay.
And easily considered one of his seminal works. I mean, I'm sure Maneesh ji will agree with me. It's considered one of his best seminal works in Ghalib's thing, because it comes from the heart.
Yes, Extempore.
This is.
He was good.
That was, the context was very interesting. Yeah, it threw more light on that whole couplet.
What is the meaning of the word ghazal in Arabic?
Maneesh ji.
Yeah, so basically it means talking to your beloved.
Yeah.
Acha.
So it's basically talking to your beloved. Ghazal means talking to your beloved, and but it has it's just a form of poetry. So and it has been used in Hindi too. A lot of poets, Hindi poets. The thing is, but they are neither considered to be the Hindi poets or considered to be the Urdu poets. The Urdu one says that they are Urdu, are Hindi, and Hindi one says they are, because they use they had often more used the Urdu word, so they are considered to be Urdu poets by Hindi speakers.
I think
that one of the prominent figures.
Difficult times, no? Ghalib had gone through a lot of difficult times, deprivation.
Yeah,
and that made him bring out a lot of real-time, those ghazals. Because he was also craving for, like say, for example, for getting the pension, he had to travel all the way from Delhi to Calcutta, and he almost spent 4 years for that. And at that point of time, it was told that 64 or 65 paisa was the pension. So now you can just imagine the inflation, how it has how inflation has played a role.
And actually, during that time, he actually got some stipend from emperor. I'm not exactly able to remember.
Yeah.
No, not only British government, from a king also. Okay. I think so. That was the king of Rampur who actually started giving him some allowances. So for that he has said a couplet: "Ghalib वजीफा खार हो दो शाह को दुआ, वो दिन गए जो कहते थे नौकर नहीं हूं मैं." So you are actually you want to think that you are living on the mercy of the king. You are living on a wazifa, you are living on a side one. So you should be praiseworthy for the king, and you should be praying for him for his good health. Those days are gone when you say that you are not a servant. And while in the same ghazal where he starts with दाईम पड़ा हुआ तेरे दर पर नहीं हूँ मैं खाक ऐसी जिंदगी पे कि पत्थर नहीं हूँ मैं.
नहीं
Where
हूँ.
he is actually educating for his own self worth. So he's saying कि I'm not something like I'm not a stone just lying at your doorstep, and it's not I will just kick out such a kind of a life where I'm just treated as a stone lying on the somebody's footstep, and and people are just going to trample me up and went away. So this is the kind of contradiction you will find in the poetry. Once he will go all the way up that he is the superior, then suddenly he will come down and just settle it to something subtle and very witty.
Very witty.
To something balance it up. Okay.
His wit is I'm sorry to interrupt, Manish. His wit is exclusively reserved for the mullahs, but I'm sure Manish will agree with me.
The best of his wit is reserved for them.
Yeah.
If you talk about, he haven't been that much against the religious traditions in this now. The Mir Zaki Mir has been he has been someone who has actually literally called up them to them, and whatever not had he is, if you will listen to his poetry today, that was considered to be blasphemous. That one still nobody can even dare to say such poetries even in a modern democratic societies where you don't have religious autocracy and theocracy going on.
Really?
These are the kind of poetry.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is the kind of poetry he is having, and the same goes with Akbar Allahabadi. Akbar Allahabadi was a judge and in the district courts of Allahabad, and he was a poet. He is considered to one of the wittiest poets. Where there's one couplet of Akbar Allahabadi, I remember. वो देखें खुदा का घर हम खुदा नहीं शेख जी जाएं काबा हम इंग्लिस्तान देखेंगे वो देखें खुदा का घर हम खुदा की शान देखेंगे. So he wants to say okay, the sheikh should go and he should visit Kaaba and do all the rituals and the pilgrimage. I'm going to England. I'm going to see the grandeur of the majesty of the creation, and you better you go, but I'm going to enjoy whatever the God has built. So I'm not going to just. And he has been very critical about that thing. And there is a very famous ghazal. I think so. You all must have a Hangama hai kyun barpa thodi si jo peeche.
Yes. Yeah.
So, but that is a very deeply philosophical ghazal in itself. Okay, so we will keep it small because that is the whole ghazal. We will go through each and every couplet and how it is. The superficial meaning is different, and how that the actual meaning comes up to be
very deep. It's extremely deep.
Yeah. Okay. And my favorite poet is Allama Iqbal. Okay, so he was somebody who has presided a Muslim League. Yeah, presided Muslim League, and the guy who wrote Sare Jahan Se Acha Hindustan, he's the same guy.
Oh, okay.
But they usually, because he was the creator, he's thought to be the creator of the idea of two nation theory. So he's not much revered in India. Well, in Pakistan, he's treated as their national poet, and there is also they have a national holiday on his birthday. So that is what is the stature of him is in. The same goes with Ghalib. Ghalib's major poetry is written in Persian rather than in Urdu, because there is a very small portion of his poetry which is written in Urdu. The same goes with Iqbal, because both of them actually found that the people in India, especially in the Indian society, they are not acceptable to the revolutionized ideas, and they are not that acceptable to the new figurative and thinking. So both of them had adopted Persian as the language for where the kind of doing the blasphemous poetries. So they had actually went. I don't actually can't read Persian. If I would have, I would share something with you about that. But that is how the things are good, and there are like many translations of that their Persian poetries too. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, any questions? We have 5 minutes more.
The other thing is that if you look at, say, Kabir himself, the way he brought out that weaving profession in his poetry, like, Chadariya Jeeni Re Jeeni, Re Ram Naam Ras Bhini. That means body is like woven cloth and is permeated by the Ram and Naam. That he's comparing the body to a the cloth which is the Ashtakamal ka charkha banaya panch tatu ki puni. That means 8-petaled lotus was used as a spinning wheel, and the 5 elements, how he's trying to compare that. Now das baas bunne ko lage morak maili kini. That means it took almost 9 to 10 months to weave that. He's comparing to our body, our human body. It took about 9 to 10 months to weave that. And then why should we make it impure? Why not make it pure? And why not going for realization? So how beautifully he's trying to bring that concept of weaving, comparing to our body itself, and then saying that, then you go to a guru, he says, then jab mori chadar ban ghar aayi, rang rech ko deni. That means my bedsheet blanket, when it came, I gave it for coloring. Coloring means he's comparing it to a guru who can make some influence on him. So a neatly woven blanket, how it can be colored. I think many of these people have lived their life rather than, reading from books and all that. They have lived their life. They have looked at the occupation. They have tried to compare that with many of the things in life. And such a beautiful comparisons they have made.
Beautiful, yeah.
Beautiful, really, really. So, yes, any more?
Kabir's Bura Do Dekhan Main Chala.
Yeah, Bura Na Koi.
That is, it's a fantastic way of saying, look into you. Ghalib has Ghalib has something similar, which you would all have heard, but which I'd like to repeat. Where he says, "Umr bhar Ghalib yahi bhool karta raha, धूल चेहरे पे थी और आईना साफ करता रहा." The translation would be, throughout my life, I've been making just one mistake. I've been cleaning the mirror when it was my face that was dirty.
धूल चेहरे पे था लेकिन आईना साफ करता रहा.
आईना साफ करता रहा. धूल चेहरे पे थी, which means I am the guy who was to blame.
Very good comparison, yeah.
Yes, good comparison.
धूल चेहरे पे था, आईना साफ करता रहा.
Wonderful, so beautifully put. The analogy is so beautiful.
All these metaphors have come so long back, and we are only twisting these analogies. I think these people have got the metaphors for the first time, I guess. If I'm not
We are parroting them. That's all.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you see the poetry of Rumi, and Kabir, they are having quite many similarities regarding the use of the same metaphor. Because during that period, you were not having a lot of things, but a lot of modern things. So it will be either around the clay, it will be around something like, very simplistic things in life. Or something related to nature. So this is how, and the most profound thing about Kabir is that he uses the simplest of the metaphors, and it's something not like this is something what distinguishes Ghalib. Ghalib is he actually complicates most of the simplest things, and Kabir actually simplifies more,
yeah,
even
just the opposite.
Yeah, so that is how
Kabir also says that one who criticizes you keep him near your house. In case you can build a house inside your house itself, please build a house for him, one who criticizes you, because the person who criticizes you is the person who will ensure that you are clean. Without using soap itself, you will become clean. So that is the kind of thing that Kabir is telling. See the kind, we always love people who appreciates us, not those people who criticizes us. But those people who criticizes us are the people who are going to develop us.
Yeah.
But I guess both their audiences were different.
Yeah.
Because by the time it came to Ghalib, he had there was an emperor, and particularly with Bahadur Shah Zafar, there was an emperor who was heavily into Shayari. He has got some of his best works. Even Bahadur Shah Zafar has got some of his best works. Yeah. So I guess he had royal patronage, which Kabir never had. So Kabir was more meant for the masses, I think.
Okay.
So for the local people, so he kept it simple, you know. On the other hand, Ghalib was never like that. So
Also, I
Yes.
believe
Lovely.
that when it comes to Ghalib and Kabir, since we learned Kabir so much from school days, Kabir speaks a lot about how to live life, regular routines, simple lives. Whereas Ghalib is so much more of romance, the upper level, connecting with God. So somehow I always felt these two were, though there was so much knowledge that's coming in from both, they both were from two totally different thought process. One is this love for God, love for your, you know, love for your better half, or whoever you call this love you're singing to praises to. And on the other hand, Kabir speaks about real life incidents, who you should be, more of self growth. This is what I thought was something that I really always picked up from school days when we used to write, also because there was no Ghalib in school. So Ghalib and ghazals always come with the association of love. This connect, this unseen connect with whether it's God, whether it's the person you love. So it's so different when you see both of them. That's something that I really enjoyed. And today it was awesome to see both of them coming together. This whole love and self growth, love for self, love for
Yeah,
yourself,
yeah.
everything coming together. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
Today, I
Really
Yeah,
enjoyed this
really,
session.
because
really.
It
God
was
is
a
within you,
beautiful
loving
session.
yourself is something, you know. God is in your heart, and that's what He
Yeah.
says.
True.
Exactly.
In Ghalib's whole poetry, if you see, so it's something like, you know, how you are going to deal with the pain in your life. Something he's trying to, you know, make
Livelihood.
peace with, you know, whatever the miseries he's facing in his own life. So somewhere he's actually, you know, more or less he's communicating it to himself. Okay, this is how it is going to be. So be used to it, please. So he's
Very
just, you
true.
know, more trying of, you know,
Very.
convincing of
Since he
himself that
lost,
you have, you know,
yeah,
There's so
many
much
children,
emotion
so
in
many,
everything he says. He's connecting
yeah,
with emotions, a lot of pain, and he connects
lot of
pain to life.
pathos.
Yeah, all that. There is so much of that. And Kabir is like, this is how it is. You have chance to still make changes. You still have chance. There is a lot of chance and, you know, things that you can do.
Yeah.
And Ghalib is, and all this come, they're like, okay, this is it. This is how it's going to be. There's
I
going to
think
be pain. The person who loves you, you know, loyalty is broken by the people you love. They go off to that complete genre of conversation. Whereas Kabir will be like, you have a chance. You can do this. See, you're, like even this particular Doha that you said about the mud, you know, Rondhna, that's there is so basically the mud is telling the Kumar that today you are giving me pain. You're like, you know, making me whatever, but in the process there is so much pain. Times can change anytime. Today you are giving me this pain, the Rondhna, the pain that you're giving me. Tomorrow when you will be dead, I will be, you know, in you.
Yeah, you become
Needing you.
mud.
And I will be
Yeah,
Rondhifying you in that
yeah.
way. I will
Saying
be
you are going to get
decomposing
converted to
you
mud.
completely.
Into
So
mud.
times
Yeah.
change. Today you may be
Yeah,
above
that's so
me.
beautiful.
Tomorrow I will
Beautiful.
be.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
माटी
And
का है
above
तुम
all,
पर को,
learning
दूसरा
that
there is
रूप
a
एक दिन ऐसा आवेगा मैं
yes,
रोंदूंगा तो है.
Ah,
yes,
because
Yes,
Rondura
when
is what, you
you
know, that molding or that
yeah.
kneading.
needing,
and
yeah.
Is you know, that squeezing of the heart when you have this Rondhta hua pain. So
Correct.
they think
yes,
today
yes,
you're
yes.
doing it to me. And so again, Kabir is trying to say that you know, times can change. Today you can be superior, somebody is below you, and you treat
True.
them badly. Tomorrow times may change, and he may be above you, and he could do the same.
And I think it does wonders to everybody's egos, you know.
Yes,
Ego is the
he
big
speaks a
thing. So
lot
it's
about
like
ego.
you may be now the potter, but
there
you
is
know, tomorrow
Exactly.
you'll be nothing, you know. So keep
It's
your
there is
egos
a,
under
again,
control.
Kabir again brings that similarity to a woodcutter. A woodcutter who is cutting the wood, he says that you are cutting me today.
Yeah,
Tomorrow I am going to be in your, you know, the funeral kind of thing.
exactly.
Yes, yes,
How
yes,
it
yes.
changes, you see.
You will be lying and I will be
Yes.
carrying you.
Yeah,
One is a potter and the other is a woodcutter. Wood and
yes.
mud. You know, they're
Mm.
Yeah,
there is
like
a
Maneesh said, those times metaphors, you know, simple everyday life. Today
there is
we
a
have the
beautiful
screen and
there's a beautiful Shayari I read somewhere, which is not necessary. I don't think it is Ghalib. It says, ए बुरा वक्त जरा अदब से पेश आ, ए बुरा वक्त जरा अदब से पेश आ, वक्त नहीं लगता वक्त बदलने में.
So beautiful.
Very
नहीं
good.
लगता वक्त बदलने
Wonderful.
में, सीधा काइंड ऑफ ना, वक्त नहीं लगता वक्त बदलने में.
Yeah.
This is exactly it. This is what Kabir is also telling us.
Yeah.
वक्त नहीं
Yes.
लगता वक्त बदलने में. वाह.
What was that? Bura what?
वक्त
जरा
नहीं लगता
जरा
वक्त
अदब से
बदलने में.
पेश आ.
Adab se pesha. Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Adab se as in
Zara
really
adab
come
se
with
pesha.
respect.
Ah,
Watch
Respect.
what you're doing.
Treat me with respect.
Yes. What
Yes,
you're doing,
yes,
because
yes.
tomorrow you never know how
You
fast
never
times will
know.
change.
पलट जाएगा.
Yeah.
इधर का उधर, उधर का इधर. Oh, so beautiful.
This is
Good
this is,
session.
this is the
Really nice.
this is the most interesting part of Allama Iqbal's poetry, that he is somebody who gives you the power, and he pushes you to rebel against all the things you're going through in your life. He's somebody who will push you to do the extreme, and somebody who would encourage you to reach up to the pinnacle of success, something like. But it is his poet only. खुद ही को कर बुलंद था कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है.
Ah, yes, yes,
Ah.
yes.
That
Oh,
is
that is
Allama Iqbal.
Iqbal.
मनीष
अच्छा,
जरा
अच्छा,
जरा धीरे
हाँ.
से बोलिए वो वाला. जरा
Oh,
धीरे
बहुत
से.
अच्छा.
आप
कर बुलंद
दौड़
इतना.
रहे हो. हाँ.
खुद ही
हाँ.
को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है.
Yeah,
अरे
yeah,
वाह.
beautiful. Oh my God,
Yes,
that's
वाह वाह वाह.
that's so true.
At a one point he says, सबक मिला है महराज मुस्तफा से मुझे कि आलम बशरियत की जद में है गर्द. That means it is from the essence of, because this is a very famous incident in the Islamic theology, that Prophet Muhammad, while he was being alive, he had ascended to heaven and then came back. That's what the importance of Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem is, that was a place from where he actually ascended to heaven. So that is the importance of that particular site for Muslims. And so sabak mila hai maharaj, I had learned this lesson, that even a alive man can go to the heaven and come back from the essence by the story of essence of heaven of Prophet Muhammad. Sabak mila hai maharaj Mustafa se mujhe ki alam bashriyat means bashar means human, bashriyat means humanity, that even the skies are within the limits of humanity. Humans can even
aspire for the skies.
Oh,
if you see his poetry, in Allama Iqbal's poetry, it will be most of time into the metaphysical terms, and talking about all the he's a very unusual Urdu poet, where you will find usually Urdu poet you will find that metaphors like wine and saki and rakib and all that, but here Allama Iqbal will find metaphors like sky, stars, and सितारों से आगे जहां और भी है, अभी इश्क के इम्तिहान और भी है, तनायत न कर आलम रंगू पर. I actually forgot that concept. तनायत न कर आलम रंगू. I'm not getting it actually able to remember that. So that is how different is. And another thing is that the way he has used the form of nazm. There are two of his very famous nazm. One is Shikwa, and another one is Jawab-e-Shikwa. So for the first poem he wrote in 1908, I guess, 1905 or 19. That was during the start of, and he's a very scholar poet. If you read through his poetry, even to understand his poetry, you have to actually read a lot of history, especially the Islamic history, and you have to have some knowledge of even of the Islamic theology to even understand his poetry. So he starts with Shikwa, where he actually is lamenting against the God. He's actually complaining to the God. Shikwa means saying the complaint, that he's complaining to the God, that we have been following your path, we have been totally committed to the oneness of God, and we are following all the basic principles of Abrahamism, but you are not doing favor to. This is during the time, the start of Ottoman Empire, fall of Ottoman Empire. Yeah. And in that, to reply to the same poem, when he realized that there is some fault in the community itself, he wrote a poem called Jawab-e-Shikwa. So he has he used to make a joke on himself that actually what happened when he wrote Shikwa, the clerics they had issued a fatwa against him, that he is being blasphemous, he's complaining to God, and he's being critical of God. But when he wrote Jawab-e-Shikwa, so everybody praised him. So he used to make fun of it, that when I was complaining as a man to God, I was in the shoes of men and I was complaining to God. So that time these people had issued a fatwa against me. And now when I had donned up the role of God and is replying to men, now they are praising me, which is rather which is the concept of that kufr, that one should not act like as a God. Nobody should sit on a judgment on anybody else. So rather when I'm donning up the shoes of God, so everybody is praising me, which while the actually should be the contrary. So that's a very his Jawab-e-Shikwa starts with दिल से जो बात निकलती है असर रखती है पर नहीं ताकते परवाज मगर रखती है. Whatever comes from your heart, that has an effect, and though it might not be having wings, but it has the power to fly. It has the power to fly it.
Yeah. Wow.
That's how so it's a very long poem.
Motivational, extremely motivational.
Yeah.
I think many of these motivations and all, come from those lines. Like say, for example, time management itself, you see, kal kare so aaj kare so ab. Pralay hogi, Gauri karega tab. The entire time management is there. The kind of procrastination that sometimes comes in has been so beautifully captured. And we have so many classes based on that, time management. But he has very beautifully expressed in those two duas itself.
Even Kabir's some of the duas are very deeply philosophical if we will try to understand. There is one duha of him, had had tape so awliya behad tape so peer, had tape so awliya behad tape so peer, had anhad dono tape wako naam fakir.
Yes.
Kabira wako naam fakir. So that means somebody who is who had just went through who took himself from the boundaries of existence. So he is Aulia, okay. Anhad, who was Hadhad Tape Aulia, Behad Tape who had even transited all the boundaries. He's he's called Peer, and the third the level of the enlightenment we consider in Sufism, that is Fakir. That means you had renounced everything and you are unaffected by anything around you. Hadhad tape so awliya, behad tape so peer, had anhad dono tape. If one has transcended even the boundaries and boundaryless too, then he becomes a fakir. So that is how Kabir describes.
Beautiful.
Okay, great.
Yes, so it was very nice, really much more magical and absolutely wonderful session we had with the three speakers. Thank you so much, Ramgopalji, Maneesh, and I'll call him Maneesh because he's so much younger than all of us, and Anilji. And looking forward to more. I think a lot got left, and it has just whet our appetite and our understanding about the whole thing. And so many more shayars were mentioned. So hope we continue this. Yes, and so thank you very much. And shall we wind up now?
Yeah, wonderful. We have left us with so many
tips and all. In fact, Kamini ji. Thank you, TG, for well orchestrating that. I was thinking how to go about it when Kamini ji told that why not have some music also in between. So then I thought that I should give an opportunity to the singers. So that's how the YouTube came into mind, and TG played it so well, and
yes,
I just turned it on and off. That's
timing.
That's what I was wondering how to do that, but then you did it.
So thank you so much for having come over.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Kamini ji for facilitating and moderating the session, bringing all the people together. The flow was excellent. Ramji, again, thank you so much. Manish.
Thank you, TG.
First time you started out with facilitation.
We've learned so much from him. Yeah.
Yes, and please join the book club.
And Anil, thank you so much for having come over. Beautifully orchestrated, beautifully brought together the points.
Yes.
It's such a lovely session. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Manish ji, one for the road.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, go ahead, please.
We are waiting.
Yeah,
We are
yeah,
waiting.
please. Yeah.
लस्सी के साथ,
Why not?
लस्सी के साथ.
Thank you very much, Kamini,
Okay.
and all
Definitely.
Yes,
the
Shobha.
poets.
Manish ji, ek
Thank you,
aur,
Shobha,
last
for
one for the
hanging
road.
in there.
one for
Yeah,
the road,
Manish.
Manish ji.
One
Yeah.
for the road. Cheers to that.
Okay.
One doubt I have,
Ashok.
could the difference in their poetry be due to Kabir being from the 14th century or 15th century
15.
and from a rural background, and also he was a weaver.
Yes. Yes.
And Ghalib in the 18th century, you said?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
he was moving along with the emperors. He was
Yes, that's it.
enjoying
belonged to the
his
court.
wine, and he had a girlfriend, and leading a very probably a little more higher life than Kabir. So Kabir's poetry was very simple, and as you say, for the masses, and of course according to his background. And Ghalib's is a little more I don't know what the right word is.
Subtler.
Nuanced, elite.
Yeah. Yes. Little more subtle, and yeah.
Actually, there is something even more to it. The fact that the poetry of Ghalib is he is more self-observed in his own pain and the things going around him. So actually his poetry deals with that. And when we talk about Kabir's poetry is really metaphysical. He talks about the world, he talks about the things all around, and he talks about his all the perspectives of life. It's not singly deals with his own miseries, but rather the miseries of the masses, and rather the correction of it. See, Ghalib is one poet who had just who would put too forth many questions, but had given too many answers. Kabir is somebody who answers, where you will find where you can find actually answers to your questions. He's somebody like the same is with Allama Iqbal. The same is with the poetry of Rumi. You will actually find up your answers. There's a very famous poetry of Allama Iqbal called Piro Murshid. Actually, what happens, what is with Allama Iqbal is that he used to consider Rumi as his spiritual master. So he had written a poem which is half in Persian and half in Urdu. The lines which Allama Iqbal is saying is in Urdu, where he's asking questions to Rumi, and he getting into the shoes of Rumi is replying in Persian. In the one couplet, one couplet is in Urdu and another couplet is in Persian. That's how the whole poem is like. That poem is called Piro Murshid. So that's how the thing is. So that's actually, it's not only about the time they had been through, but it is also about the way that they look at life. And I have been, this is my own couplet that आगे है मकाम अहले नजर अहले हुनर से शगुफ्ता करे है शुआ सेंस. आगे है मकाम अहले नजर अहले हुनर से शगुफ्ता करे है शुआ शम्स शजर को समर से. That means it is the place of the people who understand. Ahle Nazar means the people who have the vision to understand the art, any form of art. It is above the place of the people who are even creating that art itself, because these are the people when the sunlight, when it falls on the tree, it bears the fruit. It is the people who understand these arts and who interpret these art. They bring the new meanings and new nuances to that particular form of art. So it is the place of people who understand the art is even a place
higher than the
people who create
artist himself.
the art. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, madam. Rightly pointed
That's
out,
your own.
Rightly pointed
Oh,
out.
wow.
The difference in their way of life, both Ghalib as well as Kabir. That is what is bringing in their renditions also. Like say, for example, if you look at Ghalib was more of sadistic, because and out of that he brought out so many intellectual insights. Whereas Kabir was looking at the society as a whole, and he wanted to bring in solution, as rightly pointed out by you, because there are so many societal problems at that point of time. How to make that problem simple and then bring out a solution to that. That was, I think, what Kabir was trying to do. And many of his dohes is finding so many ways, in different music and different way of looking at things. I think it's so beautiful.
What truly is more amazing is that written at those times, even today, we can draw parallel into our lives with both the ways, whether it is Kabir. I believe Kabir is more about growth mindset, more about motivation. Whenever you're wanting to achieve things, go beyond your own capacity, there is Kabir to look at. And when there is acceptance of what is happening in life, if you look at Ghalib, it was more about acceptance of what he was going through. There is pain. Life is like this. This is what it is. People have, if it's my better half who has left me. So the acceptance, the sorrow, the pain, more of emotion. And it is more like grief. If you look at psychology, it's like the whole grief management was going on there. Whether it is with God about life, whether it's with God, where you're telling God that, life is so difficult, but then it wouldn't have been this difficult if you wouldn't have been there. So there is so much of grief management, that all stages of grief that is going on with Ghalib. But when you look at Kabir, there is so much of motivation for any small thing. Something as simple as you have to do some work, don't procrastinate, do it now. Otherwise, you won't have time. Like, so anything he did, every work that he did, anything that was in his hand, he would make a learning out of it. Sometimes I believe that when poets say these things, it's more like they are talking to themselves loudly.
Yeah.
And we kind of connect with it because that's what we are also going through.
Yeah.
So when you're sad, when you have your wine glass and when you have other things, that's when you think of Ghalib. But in the morning, when you're running, I know that when I'm screaming at my kids, motivating my kids, it's always Kabir that comes into my mind. I'll be telling them all Kabir Doha.
So TG, we can have this extract from Ghalib and Kabir in the future talks also. Any management guru that is being talked about, any book that is being talked about, we can always take some extracts from both Ghalib as well as Kabir.
Absolutely. I think the 5 a.m. club of Robin Sharma speaks exactly what Kabir says. Do it now, do it today. Whether it's the, all the rules that he has, the 80-20 rule, all that. If you look, it's all Kabir talking. It will be
in a different.
And then he says, pal mein pralay hoegi, bahuri karega kab. So
never will get a chance to do that thing.
Exactly. And that's what he says. Get up at 5 o'clock, do your rules, do this, do that. The concepts are the same. If you look at like Ghalib says that you grieve every evening. I'm grieving of my loved one. If you go to psychology, they'll say grieving is important. Only if you grieve can you move on. And he says, yes, I'm grieving the loss of the, whether it's the connect with the God, my soul's connect with God, whether you call it nirvana or whether you call, your loved one, who's betrayed you. It is all that he's talking is exactly what we talk in psychology.
Yeah. DG, we have just now started.
In fact, Ghalib goes to the extent of saying,
Ramgopal ji, we have just now started. We are not.
Yes, I know. अभी तो महफिल शुरू है.
Exactly.
अभी रात बचा है.
In fact,
I don't mind.
In fact, Ghalib goes to the extent, Ekta beautifully put. In fact, Ghalib goes to the extent of saying, ना घम में इश्क होता तो घमे रोजगार होता. I'd rather be in love than be into everyday sorrows. Rather have this sorrow of love.
Yeah, he just makes the love of the sorrow of love so beautiful that everybody. So there are these memes on Instagram where they say, "I want to have a breakup so I can enjoy Ghalib." Ghalib is more relatable when you have a breakup and you're
the angst,
I want to go through that feeling.
We should once take up a discussion on these poets' influence in the Hindi film industry and Hindi songs.
Oh my God.
There are plenty. I think
probably take up one session on that. So that will be wonderful.
Then we will be create a Pandora's box because many of this thing would have actually come from here only.
Yes,
and very relatable because it's from the Hindi movies.
Yes.
आज करे जो सो कल कर. I mean whatever. कल करे सो आज कर.
No, it is opposite.
I'm sorry. I got it wrong.
That is okay.
I'm sorry. I ना साफ कर रहा था. There is a small couplet I read which I'd like to recite. कल भी कल की बात हुई, कल भी कल की बात हुई, आज भी कल में बीत गया,
आज भी कल में बीत गया,
कल फिर कल में आज हुआ,
कल फिर कल आज हुआ,
और यूं ही जमाना बीत गया.
So beautiful.
Too good.
This is for people who live in there yesterday.
Yes.
So with that,
Beautiful.
That
I'm
was a nice
leaving
concept.
everybody
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
from
Kamini
this
ji. Thank you.
melting
Thanks a lot, Kamini ji, for curating this. Thanks, TG. Anil ji, awesome.
Mine
Kabir was
Thanks to
was
all
an
of
eye
you.
opener,
Thanks to all
and of
of you.
course, our heartfelt thanks to Maneesh for bringing in poet's perspective into our, our everyday
and for his one of
game,
his shairas,
into our
one of his
game
shairas.
rozgar, as I would call it.
Yeah. Thank you, Kamini, for
Thanks.
bringing Maneesh into our club.
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome.
And thanks for your shairi. We are waiting to hear some more of your own creation.
Yes, I think we should.
I will rather send an invite on Clubhouse to Kamini, where we can, you don't have to go attend a video, and you just can talk via voice. Okay, there's a platform called Clubhouse. So it's getting quite popular, and the same is with the
Yes.
Twitter Spaces. If you guys are on Twitter, you can follow each other and you can interact there too. So it has came up with a feature where we can interact by voice, like we are talking right now. It doesn't allow video, but we can hear each other. So that's how.
Okay. That's a good idea for Alchemy. Alchemist. It will be good to go on to that
We'll bring
space
that
on
on.
Twitter. Yes.
We'll bring the platform.
do that.
Thanks, Manish, for the suggestion.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank
Okay.
you for coming.
Thank you all. Bye.
Enjoying.
Sabak khair.
Great.
Okay, we'll catch up.
Walaikum salam. Adab hai.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.